So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Windsor Investors Club Tuesday Talk Series with your host, real estate investor Sav, the unadulterated, no bullshit, educational, information, networking. You call it what you want. I'm missing all the narratives. Talk about real estate investors, where we bring experts out here and we try to pick their brains on everything or anything that's real estate investing and how it impacts us here in Windsor and how it can explode our portfolio. So just a couple of housekeeping rules before I introduce our guest here. If you guys can mute your mics, I would really appreciate that. All the audience, if you can mute your mics so it can get rid of all the background noise, except my cat, which is quite loud. I'm sure you can hear him. I can't mute him, unfortunately. He likes to join these conversations every Tuesday evening. But if everybody else can mute their mics, I'll be highly appreciative of that. If you guys want to turn on your video, that'll be great too, so we can actually see what you look like, and maybe you can do a picture towards the end of the conversation. And I'm just going to switch over here to Facebook real quick to make sure that we are live on Facebook. If you guys hold on a second, it's just loading up. Wow, you are loud, buddy. Take it easy, man. Yeah, we're just loading up on Facebook over here. Yada, yada, yada. Go live, man. Here we go. Sorry, guys. Technical issues, as you might expect. It's connecting here. Okay. And we are live. Okay, perfect. Thank you again for your patience. Good evening, everybody. Today, our expert is none other than Michael Dominguez. Michael, you have, first of all, welcome. Welcome to the Windsor Investors Club. Nice to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Awesome, awesome. I'm just going to give the audience here a brief profile of who you are and what you do, and then we can have a discussion. So Michael's a long-time member and award winner, I should say, of the RAIN network. So for those of you who don't know, RAIN is probably the origin of all real estate investment clubs here in Canada. So it's a long running organization there. Michael, you've been part of that for a long time. You're very active in that community, and I believe your awards are for being a real estate investor friendly realtor. So you know a little thing or two about real estate.
I do. I guess you guys could be the judge, but yeah. So
nice. From a portfolio point of view, you're actually an investor yourself. I understand you got something like 37 doors, most of which are legal duplexes, and then you have a triplex and a sixplex as well. So not only are you talking the talk, you're walking the walk as well. You're one of us more than before you're a realtor. So that's good to hear. We want to bring people who actually have done stuff so they can talk about it, which I love. You're writing a book. That's very interesting. So I understand that you're in the middle of the book and you want to get published sometime this year. We'll come back to that book because the topic of that book is really what we want to discuss today, and that's how to become a millionaire through real estate investing. So we'll definitely come back on that. But what's interesting, when we started talking about having you out on our show, one of the things that I didn't know about you before we decided to do this was that you're actually from the Windsor area. So you actually grew up here in Windsor. That's correct. All about our great pizza, and you miss it.
I do. Yeah, every time I'm down there, I have to have pizza with actually one of the guys who's on the call as well, actually. So Kevin. So we have pizza together on a regular basis. So yeah, for sure.
Awesome. I didn't mention that you're actually based in the Durham region. So Whitby, if I'm not mistaken, Whitby offshore area. But you still have family here in Windsor, and you make the trip once in a while, which I love.
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so Michael, let's get right into it. You're a realtor. You're an investor. Tell us what give us some thoughts of yours. What's happening with the market It's crazy. I know in some places, not so much crazy. In the other places, COVID has come, COVID is going. I don't know where the hell we are at this point. So, what's your year on the ground telling you? Can you give us some ideas on that?
Yeah, well, I appreciate the kind words. And actually I want to give a shout out as well to David Steinbach, who David, it looks like you're in your Army gear. Are you overseas right now? No. Okay. Well, you have to tell me later. So yeah, David's a joint venture partner of mine in one of our duplexes. And so, the advantage of being an investor is you can do what you want to do. For me, it's going swimming on a Tuesday night. For him, it's going into the Army. So anyway, so you can choose what you want. Anyway, real estate market is obviously in the Durham area, and of course in the Greater Toronto area, we're seeing maybe a bit of a different market than what's going on in Windsor, but certainly Windsor and London is going to be seeing a ripple effect of what's happening here in the Durham in the GTA. And so the first I'd like to point out to you, and actually Savio, I know I did a couple of slides as well, we could sort of talk about it. I want to remind everybody of where we were back in March of 2020. I know it sounds like a million years ago because of all the bullshit that's been happening, but in March of 2020, we had one of the strongest real estate markets in all of all time. And so we had, the slide before that was really talking about it. And we had a really, really strong economic market and things were going. Then, and I'm not going to go into all the details, but you can take a look for it yourself, things that were actually happening in this market. It seems like so long ago, but really we're talking about less than 75 days ago. We had a market that was leading towards the strongest spring market in history. So then, obviously, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about COVID either. That's the second slide, Savio. We just saw a complete shutdown. We're looking at a travel ban, and I want to come back to that in just a little bit. And we've had, a major GDP decrease and a major increase in unemployment. How much of that going forward is going to be obviously having a factor, but that's really what's been happening. But moving forward really quickly, Savio. The third slide, if you can. What we then saw was the effects from COVID, the real estate market. Yeah, the surge has ended, but the one thing which a lot of people aren't aware of is in the investment market and in the lower price entry level home market, we really haven't seen a lot of decrease in pricing. Matter of fact, the prices are virtually identical to those we saw back in January, February, March. If you read the stats that are being produced by the media, they're talking about the average home price is down. Yeah, there's some truth to that, but why that's happening is the higher priced homes in markets like Oshawa and Windsor and Toronto, they're not selling right now. But the lower priced homes are selling just as good as they were before, and the investment properties are selling. And even in Windsor, I know they're selling with multiple offers. So that's interesting to see. Certainly the level of sales are down, but the actual prices haven't really affected that much. The other thing I want to point out to you as well, and I know Windsor's had its share of long-term days on market, but it's going to be less important in this market because of the fact that we're simply not getting as concerned when a property is on the market for 30 or 60 days. The COVID situation is sort of changing the game of that. So what I'm seeing, Savio, is if you go to the fourth slide really quick, I'm not going to go into it for a long period of time, but the prices are staying pretty flat right now. And the one thing I want to share with the listeners is that first-time buyers are going to continue to surge, those that haven't lost their job. But the other thing that's going to happen, and there's not as many Airbnb and short-term rentals in the Essex County area, but certainly the short-term housing and student rental market is going to really take a bit of a shit kicking in the next 6 to 12 months. We're seeing a lot of courses being held online. So if you've been focused on the student rentals, you're going to really suffer. And if you're focused on short-term housing, a lot of these guys are actually either selling their property or they're simply going into long-term rental as a result. So how's that?
No, perfect. I mean, you know what? You're sitting so far away, but really, you hit the nail on the head when it comes to Windsor, eh? Because it's clear what's happening over here. The prices have not dropped whatsoever. I don't care what anybody tells you. I've been in bidding wars as recent as this week, where I've lost, on offers. Not so much as before. I was losing out 100,000 over asking, where I was bidding something like 60 over ask. And now I'm bidding 30 over ask, and I'm losing, for a buyer who's doing 50 over ask. This sounds like we're playing with monopoly money over here. When you talk about $50,000, $100,000 over ask, but the truth of the matter is the prices have not dropped at all. The market is still super hot here in Windsor. In fact, in next week, in our next Tuesday Talk series, we're having 2 local Windsor realtors to come and talk about the market, right? I think a lot of people, during the first weeks of March, Michael, I don't know, in your area, I assume it's the same. There was a bit of a hit. Everybody was scared. There was a bit of a fear. There was less listings coming on the market, and there was whatever was on the market was taking a little longer, going for asking or maybe a little. But that lasted a little over 2 weeks, and that was it.
Well, since we're talking Windsor, let's talk about the reason why Windsor has had its issues and the reason why Windsor is starting to surge right now.
Good, yeah.
Because a lot of times people don't necessarily understand as to why the market is going up. A lot of times, a lot of investors have tried to go into the Windsor market and failed because they figured that the prices are going to go up because it was cheap. And it just didn't happen for many, many years. But really, the tide started turning at the earlier part of the 2010s. We started seeing pricing finally going up. So if you go quickly to the 6th slide, Savio, I just want to show you that really quickly.
Yeah. Was it this one over here?
So if you take a look, no, I can't. No, keep going. Yeah, let's skip by that. That's no big deal.
Yeah.
And what's happening in Windsor, and this is what I want to share with people, is Windsor's population growth has been really, really, really weird. If you look at the GTA, we've been seeing a steady increase in pricing over the last 20, 30 years or more, and it's been a steady rise. Some years it's been better than others, but it's been a steady rise. That hasn't happened in Windsor. If you take a look at the population from 1970 to 1990, we really saw almost no growth in population. And that happened again from 2000 to about 2010. And when no more people move into a community, there's nobody pushing the pricing up. It's basically the same amount of inventory, same amount of people, and the pricing sort of stays the same. Now we've been seeing population growth been happening in the last 10 years. That's been pretty decent. And especially in the last 5 years, we've been seeing some really good growth there. And that's why the property values are going up as much as they are. Certainly the investors are coming from other markets across Ontario and across Canada, but it's the population growth that's really driving this. And the population's growing because we've seen job growth as well, which is really kind of cool. Obviously, COVID's going to put a bit of a wrinkle on it, but with the immigration that's been happening across Ontario, some of those people are locating in Windsor, and obviously it's got some great, climate in terms of.
I'm excited you brought this up, Michael, because we've talked about this as well. What's happening in Windsor, and we looked at the next 10, 15 years projected population, and Windsor is one of those.
Go to the next slide. Go to the next one. Yeah.
Bring that in there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, here you go. Okay. Yeah. I'll just speak on this before I come back to that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you say it faster than me. The population is not growing quite at the same rate as Toronto, but it's growing. It's actually, they're projecting in the next 10, 15 years some major growth in that market.
Absolutely. And, we see the spillover, right? Because the GTA is just getting too expensive. And what I wanted to talk about, and maybe this is a macroeconomic level and more political than it should be, but, you've been to all the forums online. People are talking doom and gloom, right? COVID is here. Once COVID goes away, the economy is still hit, and it's going to take a lot of time before, the general consensus is going to take a couple of years before it goes up. There's some doom and gloom sayers out there who are saying that it's never going to go up, or it's going to take a massive effort because the country is in debt, right? What's your thoughts on that? What do you think is going to happen with that, if I can ask?
Yeah, well, honestly, anybody who gives you their opinion is probably just guessing, just like anybody else. Like, I'm certainly not an economist. The one thing that I'm very happy about of being in investment real estate versus any other venture is I wouldn't want to be putting all my money right now in the equity market. I wouldn't want to be investing in a lot of companies. Certainly, I'd be really nervous if I owned a retail business right now. We're seeing retail going out all over the place. There's stores that are not going to open. And if I owned even a retail plaza, I'd be really nervous about that right now, that we're going to see a lot of vacancy. So the one thing about residential real estate is unless people are moving out of your community, like we saw in Alberta in the last 5 years or so because of the oil pricing, unless we see a decline in population, you're not going to see a decline in the number of potential renters. It's just not going to happen. As a matter of fact, historically in growing markets, the population grows at a faster rate than the new housing to replace it or to supplement it. And as a result, we see increases in pricing and values of the existing properties, and we see rising in rents as well, which is really important for us investors. So none of this is going to change. There was a recent announcement by the immigration minister Canadian immigration minister, and they're still projecting almost 1/3 new Canadians coming into our country in 2020, and another 1/3 in 21 and 22. So if we're talking almost 1 million new Canadians, a percentage of those are going to be coming to Ontario, and of course a percentage of those are going to be going to the Essex County region. So I don't see there being a major decline in property values. It's still a straight supply and demand, and as long as people the biggest thing is as long as there's job growth in our country, or even job maintenance, I think we'll be pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think you've addressed it, perfectly, because what can the government do? I mean, this is a revenue stream. I mean, the more the people that the immigration policy is catered to that, right? That's really holding up the economy to a big sense, because this is taxpayer money. This is new taxpayer money into the coffers, right? So you're talking about a million people over the next couple of years in a situation where the economy is down. This is one of the only tools the government does have. So I wouldn't be surprised if history repeats itself, and and the projections, they actually supersede the projections, right? Where they say it's 300, but we're getting 350, sometimes closer to 400,000 people every year. Eh? So it's clear for me. I mean, you have the chart over here. The growth rate is where did you get these numbers from Michael? Because what I've pulled out from Census Canada, we are looking more at 3+, almost 4%, right up to 2040 for Windsor, and it's really because of the
these are in 5-year increments. So
yeah.
I don't know, that was out of some sort of census projections, but and even if my numbers are low, it's growing, and as long as we're seeing growth, I feel very optimistic about what's going to happen in that market for sure.
Yeah. Besides the fact that in Windsor, as we have a couple of major projects for the next 10 years that's going to really beef up the economy. And from everything I've heard, these projects are still going ahead, right? And when I talk about the projects, I'm talking about the new Gordie Howdy Bridge, that's building up.
The bridge, yeah.
They've already broken ground there, so those communities around that is getting a lot of input of subsidies from the government to build up those communities, right? And we have a couple of projects going on in Sandwich Town, which is getting a lot of support from the city, which I love. And then we have the new hospital, the mega hospital, right? So that's something that it's been delayed. There's a lot of controversy behind that, but I still believe it's going to go ahead. And that'll be another project which will last for 4 or 5 years. And if you think about any other city that's actually built a mega hospital, the offshoot of that in that industry is huge. So the health industry, right? So you have more doctors, you have more medical centers, you have more research and development, and all that is coming to Windsor. So, I think, again, going back to the topic at hand, the fundamentals of real estate investing really hasn't changed. has it. It doesn't matter if COVID came or not. That was a blip.
No, but the one thing that is happening in the Windsor market is we're seeing an alteration in the quality of the landlords in that market, I think, where before the slumlord mentality was prevalent in that region, and a lot of the landlords never took care of their properties. There was a high, the tenant profile was maybe a little bit worse. Certainly the houses were in horrid shape. And again, I'm generalizing, but that was the stereotype of Windsor. What we're starting to see now as pricing going up, we're going to be seeing more renters for a longer period of time. And we're talking quality tenants. Using the Gordie Howe Bridge as an example, if I was moving to Windsor for a year or two to work as a contractor in Windsor, I wouldn't want to live in a slummy type of a home. If I'm bringing my family, I'd want to live in a really nice quality, either single family home or a renovated 2-unit suite, which we're going to talk about later on. That's the kind of tenants that that we saw in markets like like London and Hamilton and Oshawa, where once they were pretty much only the dregs of society, and I'm generalizing here, were the tenants. Now we're seeing
far from the truth. You're not absolutely not far from the truth, and it's something that we address quite openly. And I would say if I can toot my own horn over here, that's one of the missions of the Win City Investors Club, right? We bring people out here who are interested in real estate investing or who are already landlords, and we try to educate them and say, listen, in the long run, it makes a difference for you financially and ethically, of course, if you are a better landlord and you take care of your tenant. Because at the end of the day, that that property that you own, the tenant is paying for that property, right? That's money in your pocket. And the better you take care of that property, the better you take care of them, you're going to reap the benefits of that reward, of that hard work, right? So definitely, I think that has changed. Absolutely, right? And that's really one of the reasons why I showed up in Windsor. A few years ago, I left. I'm originally from Oakville, very, very rich area, and I left to come to Windsor because I saw what happened with Hamilton. That was Hamilton, 10, 15 years ago. Everybody talked about it's a shitty place. Nobody wants to move to Hamilton, right? But then you had the private investors bringing in private money there, buying up these houses, doing secondary suite conversions, upping the value of the houses, putting out really, really nice products. And all of a sudden, the renters, the whole population there is, people want to go to Hamilton now from Toronto, right? And I see that happening in Windsor as well. And that's why I'm here. So, yeah.
Good stuff. And so I believe that there's a chance, again, this is what we're talking about. The premise of how I invest is you're never going to see me winning awards for owning the most properties. I'm not interested in flipping properties. It's too much work to buy a place and to sell it right away and just to try to make a little bit of money. How I like to invest is buying a quality neighborhood property. So, using Windsor as an example, I'm not buying in the downtown core. Where I'm buying is even near the university and stuff like that. I'm buying one of those classic, maybe just Riverside, or maybe trying to think now, the East End has some nice classic 1960s bungalows.
South Windsor, definitely South Windsor, yeah.
South Windsor, yeah. Buying some really nice, well-built homes that are going to outlive all of us. And the biggest challenge in Windsor, historically, has been the housing prices have been so cheap that people have just been buying up houses and then renting them out to one full family. But now, as we're starting to see the pricing going up, we're going to see more and more investors going into buying houses like that, and eventually adding legal secondary suites, which, as well, the research I did, I think it got legalized in 2017 or 2018 is when it got legalized. And I think that's a game changer for your market. It's going to take a while to really be embraced, but I've seen it in other markets, and it's a game changer.
No, absolutely, absolutely. We're gonna talk about that, and I wanna really pick your brain on that one, Michael. But before that, guys, if you have any questions so far, for either of Michael or myself, now's the time to ask. So if you want to go to the chat room and just type in your question, and we'll try and answer those questions live. You got experts online over here, trying to help you guys out. If you need information about the Windsor market, I'm your guy for that. If you want anything about real estate investing in general, or the Oshawa or the Durham region market, Michael's here. So ask your questions if there's any. Okay, the ones who are Facebook Live, then you can just put that in the comment section, and then we'll try and get that. But Michael, going back to legal second suite conversions, right? I want to just a couple of things. One, I want to bring back to something that you said before with the impact of COVID, right? When you talk about short-term rentals, Airbnb, or you talk about student rentals, right?
Yep.
Windsor is huge on student rentals, and I know for a fact some of the guys in our group are actually beginning to suffer now. With the news that classes are going online till the end of the year, at least for the third quarter semester, right? So legal second suites, I've always said, if I focus on something, that's what I want to do, and I want to stay away from these other things, right? And I think for all of those who are into legal second suites, are reaping the benefits of that, right? Any further thoughts on that? Why legal second suites? Like, why do you do it?
Well, to be honest, it's whenever you take an existing house and then sort of divide it into two, now we have the opportunity of renting out not quite double the rent of a single family home, but close enough to it. Where a single family home, and you could probably answer this better than I could, might get $1,600 to $1,900 in rent for renting out a nice little 3-bedroom townhouse or bungalow. You'll be able to get more in the neighborhood of $1,450 and $1,600 for the upper unit, maybe another $1,200 to $1,400 for the lower unit, depending on the quality and where it's located. But now we're generating in the neighborhood of about $2,500 to $2,800 in rent. So that's the reason why I do it. Is I don't wake up each day sort of saying, hey, I get to be a landlord. That's the reason why I'm doing this is from a wealth building standpoint, and the 2-unit dwellings generate me the level of wealth I want. And the difference between the student rental and the Airbnb short-term rental is they're a lot of work. That's a full-time job. If you get a really, really good 2-unit suite, like heck, the property that David and I bought years ago, we've had one tenant in the upper unit, and they've been there since we first moved in. And really, the extent of all we've had to do is a few tweaks here and there. And as long as we've done the renovation at the outset, it's a pretty lazy, laid-back investing strategy, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, awesome. I just want to add to that, in my opinion as well. If you go for something like legal second suite conversions, and you think about your exit strategy, you have multiple exit strategies, right? I mean, you can sell this thing turnkey to another investor for a cash flowing property. You can sell it to a family, to the retail, back to the retail market. So there's so many different ways you can cut this cookie. And it's really crisis free, unlike, as we said, commercial units, retail stores, Airbnbs, and then student rentals right now that are hit quite badly. So that's another added value, if you ask me, definitely.
Yeah, Savio, one other thing, which I don't know everybody who's listening today, but if I was under the age of 35 and looking for my first investment or first property, I would not be looking for my dream forever home right now. What I would look for, and I wish I was smart enough to have figured this out when I was in my 20s, but buying a legal 2-unit suite and potentially even living in the basement for a while. If I've made that basement apartment pretty spectacular, rent out the upstairs, and I'm basically living pretty much mortgage free. And it's allowed me to get into the housing market. If I'm a sketchier credit score or just barely qualifying, allowing me to be able to live in one unit and rent out another, in many cases can allow you to buy a higher priced property. So I strongly encourage younger people to be looking at 2-unit suites as well.
Oh no, that's the perfect advice, because I get a lot of questions all the time. I don't have that much of a down payment. I don't have that much of a money saved up to actually go and buy a home. Well, go and house hack, right? Go and live for free, and it's like a light bulb just suddenly shines on somebody's head and said, "Live for free? How's that even possible?" So I think Michael,
Yeah.
you hit the nail on the head when you said house hack. Go and live in the basement, rent the upper unit, or vice versa, and let it pay for your mortgage. Before we get back to legal second suites, Michael, there's a question here from Darren Mitchell. So he says, what effect do you see the slowdown in the car manufacturing North America wide have on the Windsor market? I think, you know what, if you allow me to take this one first, Michael, I think Windsor has this stereotype of being an automotive city, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say
Used to be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say otherwise, right? Yes, it is majorly a blue-collar town. But I think over the last 10 years, because of the influx of population, the overspill from the GTA and the other places in Ontario, there's a lot of more people coming over here. There's a lot more jobs being created because of that reason, right? And they're not coming here for nothing. So, as I said, there are major projects that are happening. I don't know if you've been down the 401 recently, Darren, over the last couple of years, but, right from Leamington, when you get out of Windsor, right up to, almost Waterloo, Kitchener-Waterloo, there's construction on the 401. And that's not for no reason. The reason is that the new bridge is coming in the next couple of years. That's between the U.S. and Canada, going right through Windsor. That's going to increase the volume of trade between the two countries by something like $3 million a day, right? So there's a lot of traffic going up there. So they had to actually widen the 401 because of that, because of the amount of truck volume that's going to happen because of that. The new hospital is coming up. Windsor is trying to move away from that automotive dependency, and by no means it's done yet, but there are other industries popping up. We have Quicken Loans over here, who's opened up a new office. They've hired something like 60 people. They want to really focus on Windsor as a tech hub, and they're hiring people from Toronto, bringing them here to Windsor, putting them up in nice rental units so they can work for Quicken Books. Quicken Books, if you don't know, is the Quicken Loans. It's Quicken Books. Quicken Loans is the biggest lender in the U.S., and they want to break into the Canadian market. So if that's something on their mind, I'm sure
they're based in Detroit too, I believe.
In Detroit, yep. Yeah. So Dan Gilbert is the owner founder of that, and he pretty much runs Detroit. So there are some initiatives, there is some movement happening. I myself have been here in Windsor for the last 3 years, and I can tell you honestly, from a resident's perspective, just driving down the streets, I can see the development. There's construction happening everywhere. And when I say construction, it's betterments of roads, widening of roads, new plazas, new buildings, better looking homes, tearing down decrepit homes. So there's a lot of movement happening over here. And that's from a guy sitting on the street. Okay. I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope it gives you some perspective what's going on in Windsor. But going back again. Sorry, Michael, if you want to add something?
Yeah, I'll just add. I want you to do your own research. You asked the question. Don't just take Savio's word for it. Look at how the city has changed a lot in the last 30, 40 years. When I showed that population growth curve, I think when Windsor was kind of growing up, it was vastly affected by the automotive sector. And whenever the automotive sector had slowdowns, basically killed Windsor. What they've been able to do in the last 10 years is much like Hamilton with the steel, or Oshawa with the automotive as well, is they've pulled themselves away from the dependence of automotive. So obviously if automotive pulls out completely out of Windsor, it would suck. But I totally agree with you, Savio, that they've gone in so many different directions because of the affordable housing, the proximity to the United States. I believe that we're going to see a lot more manufacturing going on in Windsor. We're going to see distribution centers happening all over the place in Windsor because it's the busiest access to the United States in the country. I think it's the busiest bridge in the world. It'll be interesting, and so I'm very bullish about Windsor. it's not, it may not see the kind of growth we see in the GTA, but if you can get cash flow and long-term appreciation, that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Join us again on our Tuesday Talk series, because I try to do a sort of economic update of what's happening on the ground over here, Darren. So, definitely join back for that, and you'll get some more idea in Windsor. I can tell you from an investor point of view, the locals are getting pretty much, outbidded for everything, right? So Windsor was known from an investor point of view for basically duplexes, so turnkey duplexes, in one very specific part. Michael, Walkerville, a very nice area, the nicer area of Windsor, where you have a lot of duplexes, triplexes. So a lot of investors, out-of-town investors, are buying that sort of stuff, and then student rentals, right? And here I come and start preaching about legal second suites, and now that's the big thing that's happening here. So there's a big movement to that, right? And there's a reason for that. So the prices, I don't know, did you have a slide on the prices, Michael, on your presentation there on Windsor?
Well, yeah, I think the last slide I did was a little bit of the secondary suite. So we're going to start talking about that.
Okay, but yeah, so guys, if you want to know about what's happening with the real estate market, and because of the out-of-town investors, join next week where we have two realtors here and we talk about the pricing. So the pricing in Windsor has, we're averaging between 12 and 14% year-on-year appreciation for the last 5 years. It is insane, right? And that's because of what's happening, the fundamentals. The fundamentals are strong over here. Okay. Okay. Going back to Michael and legal second suites. We digress here. It was such a exciting topic. I think close to our hearts. What's happening in Windsor. But for the newbie investor, for the ones who are just starting off, we know legal second suites is the way to go. Right. But one of the topics, or what are you trying? Your message of your book over there is how to become a millionaire by owning 2 or 3 properties. And I would assume you're suggesting that's via second suites.
It is, and and if I was just getting started and I didn't have the financial budget to be able to create the secondary suite right now in Windsor, or even if it didn't make a ton of sense from a viability standpoint right now to spend the $60,000 to $80,000 on a renovation for a secondary suite, the one thing I would do is, if I was looking to buy properties in Windsor right now, I'd be looking to buy properties that I know sometime in the future I can one day convert to a secondary suite. So with Windsor, and just like anywhere else in Ontario, there are certain rules that are necessary to make the property legal. And the question I'm always asked, especially in markets where it's newer, is there that much of an advantage of legalizing a property versus not legalizing it? And I would argue that it absolutely is smart to spend the extra time, get the city on board, and to create that secondary suite that's already legal, or that will be legal. And the reason for that is there's so many advantages. One, it certainly helps in the long-term resale value of that property. It helps in the appraisal value. Also, when you're getting an illegal secondary suite, that's essentially equivalent to running a bit of a rooming house. And if the city comes and realizes that you're running an illegal rental suite, that could get shut down, which would basically end your cash flow. So, and then if something really bad happens, like there's a fire in your basement apartment when it's not legal, there are legal ramifications that can come as a result of that. So don't mess around, do it right, use contractors who know what they're doing, and get that property legalized. The cool thing is once a property is legal, even if a future, let's say Windsor at some point changes their mind and doesn't allow secondary suites in the same way they are right now, once that property is legal, it will always be legal. So you never lose that status. So that's why I always recommend to get it legal. Anyway, so that's really the strategy that I've employed is getting a property, spending the money to legalize it, and get her done. And it might cost me a lot of money to get that secondary suite, get that extra dwelling unit, but the long-term cash flow as a result of that would be pretty impressive, Samuel.
Yeah, I mean, if you allow, Michael, I would like to ask you a few questions of the actual numbers. But while you're thinking about that, I just want to mention that I was
Yeah.
having a discussion with the city inspector this morning on one of my legal conversions that I'm undertaking over here. And it was a phone discussion because I had a problem. I wanted some advice on a specific part that I was doing on a fireproof wall, fire rated wall, and so on and so forth. But that conversation lasted for 10 seconds, and then we started talking, and the guy was really friendly and open, and we were talking about the Windsor Investors Club and what we're trying to do over here and so on and so forth. And he was like, the message I got from him was that they are super supportive right now of secondary conversions and doing it right, doing it right, because again, they see what's happening with the influx of population. They know what's happening from a city perspective on the infrastructure, a need for rental homes, because there's a lot of students, there's a lot of families, there's a lot of refugees even who are coming and living on mattresses. And he told me a story that he walked into a house, there was a young girl sleeping on a mattress in the furnace room, in the utility room. So after seeing that, they've taken it upon themselves to come down hard on any kind of illegal secondary dwelling, right? And they're doing that by opening up the bylaws and saying, listen, we're making it easy for you guys to legalize, so why aren't you doing it, right? So it's a no-brainer for me. It's a no-brainer for me, right? If you're a landlord and you're doing something non-conforming or illegal, then you're only asking for trouble, okay? Financially, it just makes sense to legalize, right? And I don't know if you can, Michael. I would assume the numbers are similar here in Windsor, and we can compare. But what does it take for you in Oshawa, for example, to do a legal second suite?
Yeah. Well, do me a favor and throw on that 8th slide, Sabio. That's the last one. I wanted to show that because if some of the people here, I recognize their names, and they already own 2-unit suites, but there will be likely a few that don't have it. And so just to give people an idea of the kind of property that we're looking at.
Is this one?
Yeah, that's right. Yes. So what we're essentially doing in a lot of our properties is we're taking existing single-family homes, and if it, let's say, is a bungalow, much like this property is, on the main level, we're having unit number 1, and we're not really doing a heck of a lot with unit number 1. We're maybe walling it off so that it's a completely separate dwelling unit. We're adding in laundry services for that. So maybe we're talking a few $1,000, $5,000-$10,000 if you're going to go crazy. But really, that's not an extensive expense. What we are doing is we're doing a full renovation to the basement suite. And I wanted to share with you that work with a realtor out in that market that understands the rules and maybe has already legalized one themselves. The biggest mistake you can make when you're trying to create a legal 2-unit suite is getting one in a market or an area of the city where there might not be the ability of legalizing it, or in a house where maybe the ceiling height doesn't meet the requirements, or maybe there's not a separate entrance that you can dedicate towards the basement apartment. And those are the type of properties that I would start with, Sabio, in terms of if I was going to coach anybody, saying work with a team member that knows what they're looking for. That 6 foot in Ontario, that 6'5" ceiling height is pretty well enforced. And so if you buy a house where the ceiling height is maybe only 6'1" or 6'2", and the cat is attacking you there. 6'1" or 6'2", you simply can't make it work. And so don't buy that house. It's not like we've got unlimited money here. Let's buy the houses that make the most sense.
Yeah. So just for those who are not from Windsor, who may be looking at the Windsor market to actually do this, and they have some experience from the GTA. So this typical bungalow, this 1960s, 50s, 60s bungalow that we love to do the secondary suite conversion. In the good neighborhoods here in Windsor where you want to do this, we're looking now at an average price of about $350. So and that is rapidly changed. So I can tell you.
350, they're that high now, eh?
Yeah, 350. Wow. So and this is 2020. We are, what is it, May? I won't say June, but as early as, October last year, October, November last year. So 6 months ago, that same house was selling for 275, right? Now, this is not to discourage people to say that, okay, the prices have gone up that much. Now it's harder. You got to make the numbers work, right? You got to make the numbers work. And that's important to know. So crunch the numbers, and if you guys have any questions of how to evaluate this, then put it in the comments below and I will reach out to you directly, or Michael might. I'll give you a little spreadsheet to say, okay, this is your purchase price. This is how much you got to put up from a down payment point of view. Calculate your cash flow, basically. How much cash flow you're making a month, right? If you're not making cash flow at the end of the day, and I think that's key, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, you want to buy a positive cash flowing property, because at the end of the day, if shit hits the fan, right, and the economy tanks, and your mortgage payments go up because the interest rates have gone up, you want this property to basically hold its value. Not hold its value, but to pay itself, right? It doesn't matter if the value drops because you are holding this forever, right? So at one point, over the last, you can look at, stats all you want, real estate always goes up in value. Yes, there's been peaks and there's been troughs, years and months, but over the last 10 years, 20 years, real estate has always gone up. So as long as you hold this property and
Savio, I want to stop you there. Sure. I never buy properties that I'm positive long-term or short-term we're going to see an increase in value. Like what if some worldwide pandemic comes which kills a certain amount of population, and we might see short-term blips in prices going up or down. But why, to your point, why I'm so concerned about having cash flow generating properties is if shit does hit the fan, I know that my property is going to cover all of its expenses.
That's it.
Those that are getting just the single family homes and are getting a neutral or negative cash flow in properties like that, those are the ones where they struggle later on if all of a sudden they've got to sell it during the worst time. For anybody who's old enough to remember, back in 1990 to 1995, we saw a real decrease in property values across Ontario in that time frame. And the people that were investing in negative cash flowing properties or leveraged their properties so much that they were negative cash flowing, they were the ones that in many cases went bankrupt because they just bought poorly. A secondary suite property that's already legal is far more immune to something like that, and that's what I like about those properties so much. They can survive that, and the reality is that residential real estate isn't going away. You might not see, if I bought a plaza, I can foresee a possibility that retail shopping may not exist in 20 or 40 years. I can't come up with a circumstance where people are not going to be living in homes in 20 or 40 years. I just can't see it. I feel it's
very optimistic for the commercial space, Michael. 20, 40 years seems long, long away. There's bankruptcies happening as we speak. Zara many years ago said they don't want to open up new stores, do everything online shopping, right? For those of us who didn't do online shopping, I think was forced to do online shopping over the last couple of months. And I don't believe they're going to go back to walking into a store. But that's a topic for another discussion. Going back to legal second suites, absolutely right. It has to be cash flowing so it pays itself. But, how do you become a millionaire with this? I think, going back to the Windsor market where we're saying that, we're buying these things for $350, after we put in a legal second suite, now we change the highest, best use of this property. And when we go to the bank to refi, it's not $350 anymore. We're looking at upwards of $550, right? So we've already just gained equity in that, right? And the strategy, I believe, and I'll let you talk on that, is basically take that money out and do it again, and do it again, and do it again, right? And that's really the creation of wealth right there.
You're absolutely right. And that's the other comment I make for anybody who's investing in single family homes. There's no question that single family homes are easier to buy and they're less work to set up. But the problem is that they're also what I call portfolio killers. So if your goal is to increase your portfolio to more than one or maybe two properties, if your goal is to get to 3 or 5 properties or even more, The only way that you can make that happen with the lenders is if your properties are cash flow positive, because if they are neutral or negative, the banks are going to look at those and it's actually going to hurt you in your ability to qualify for future properties. So that's another reason why I really push the properties that will cash flow. It is more work, I'm not going to lie to you, but it's certainly beneficial in the long run. And you set a price of $550, and you probably know your Windsor pricing better than I do, but I looked up and I saw a couple of properties selling in the $450 to $500 range. So let's just, for argument's sake, let's say $500,000 now, because I don't want to do any hard math on a Tuesday night. Let's be very conservative. Let's be extremely conservative. Let's say you were to get a secondary suite for $500,000, one property, okay? Just one property. You're 28 years old and you buy one property. Well, that property over the course of a 30-year mortgage will go from a mortgage of about $400,000 today, will drop down to zero in 30 years if you never refinanced. And I'm not talking about the people that are growing a portfolio of 10 and 50 properties, something like that. I'm talking about if you bought one secondary suite to go into your portfolio, how that can make a difference in your life. So if you bought one property and in 30 years that mortgage goes from $500,000 or $400,000, I guess, down to zero, you're also going to see that property appreciating in value. And you know the Windsor market better than I do, but let's say we're talking about just a conservative 2.5%, 3% growth in terms of property values over the course of 30 years. Well, in that time frame, we're going to see that $500,000 property worth about $1 million in 30 years. And let's say all of your cash flow, even if you took every dollar in your cash flow and it just went for repairs and you kind of pissed it away, even if you weren't cash flowing, owning one property for 30 years, that property is going to be worth about $1 million. You, if you're 28 years old now, at the time you're 58 years old, you have got $1 million in wealth just from one property. So let's say you expand that to 2 properties or 3 properties. You spend a little bit more time. Maybe you leverage your first property to get a second one, to get a third one. I'm not even talking about buying 5 and 10 properties. Savio can go crazy and buy his 20, 30 properties if that's what he wants to do in his lifetime. But if you want to be the lazy man approach and get up to 3 properties, you've reduced that time frame from 30 years down to as low as 10 years. And in 10 years, those properties will have, with the mortgage pay down and the appreciation, you'll be at the point where you've built $1 million in investable real estate just from those 3 properties alone with 6 tenants. I know that some of the people on this call can share. In many cases, and I've actually, in my book that I'm writing, I actually interviewed some of the people who own secondary suites. And in many cases, the ones that own 2, 3, 4 properties, they're spending in the neighborhood of 5, 6, 7 hours a month on these properties, doing a little bit of paperwork. Maybe once a month or so, they have some sort of issue. Every 6 months or so, they check in on the property. Maybe once every couple of years, they replace a tenant. That's the kind of stuff we're talking about here. And this part-time job, this side hustle can make the difference in making you a millionaire. I tell anybody under the age of 30, don't be messing around with making scrunchies or working at Uber Eats or driving some cab or something like that as your side hustle. Buy a frickin' real estate home and you can make it happen and get a property, get it legal, and there you go. And if you're even 55 years old right now, in 10 years, you can turn those 1 or 2 properties into $500,000 to $1 million if you do it right. So that's why I'm a big fan of real estate, because it can really make a difference in it's not instant, but within 5 to 10 years, you can make a huge, huge difference in your life. And, if you have a bit of a legacy, you want to be able to retire earlier, you want to be able to leave money for your kids. That's the kind of thing that owning 2 or 3 properties can really do in your life.
Michael, if you were on stage right now, this is the point that you would drop the mic. Because you You've sold us, right? You've sold us. Listen, we're heading towards the end of the show. You know, we're right on time over here. If anybody has any more questions to ask, to discuss, or you want some burning issues solved right now, we'll try our best to do so. If you want to put that in the chat group, I'm going to move just quickly over to the Facebook live chat and see if we have any comments over there. Let me try and do that. So Sachin says that he has a property in South Windsor and he wants to know if he can do a legal second suite conversion on that. Awesome. Sachin, DM me and then we can take a walk. We can definitely look at it, right? If you guys have any questions on legal conversions in Windsor, then definitely reach out to me. You know, we in the Windsor Investors Club, we actually have a course that we do, right? So we put on a course, myself and Ken Beckendem, who does legal second suite conversions. We'll talk all about the OBC. Before that, we'll talk about what we're looking for, you know, how to buy a home with the idea of doing a legal second suite conversion. And we talk about the process of actually converting it, right? So look out for that in our group. There's the next course is coming up first week of July, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to sign up for that, you know, you'll get everything you need to know about doing a legal second suite conversion here in Windsor. And Sachin, yeah, just DM me and we can talk about that. Michael, it was awesome having you over here. You know, you're a wealth of experience. You've done this before. You've done it. You know, you're not 28, but you're what, 30, 32 or something like that. So you're well on your way to being that millionaire. Listen, I'm looking forward to that book. Let us know when it comes out. I want to have you back. You know, let's have you back on the show, and then we would love to pick your brain of what your thoughts are on Windsor, because I know your ear is always close to the ground. You have family over here, and I should ask you before you leave, what's your favorite pizza joint here in Windsor?
Oh, geez. Kevin, I need help on this here. Send a message real quick here. Where's the place that, I'm trying to think of the name of the place that we go to.
We'll let other people buy you.
Armando's?
Armando's. Yeah, that's where we go.
Yeah, good choice. Yeah. The pizza, when I first came to Windsor, everybody talked about the pizza, and I was like, what the hell? Pizza? You know, in Windsor? And, you know, true to his word, actually, the pizza is pretty damn good here. Arabic food as well, by the way.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the thing that's really odd, and my wife still is shocked about this, is the fact that Windsor uses canned mushrooms for their mushrooms. And it's the oddest thing, and it's the only place that really does that, but they win awards for their pizza. It's really, really good. So if you haven't had Windsor pizza before, so it's different than New York style, it's different than Chicago style, but it's really, really good. So one thing, sorry, Savio, before we turn off, I wanted to, obviously that guy who's already got a property, it's always a, you know, obviously if you've got it, you got to, you know, DM Savio to see if you can in fact legalize it. But if you are looking for a property, obviously having a separate entrance is important. Having a ceiling height is vital. But the other thing that's not being talked about right now that I just wanted to share, one last little word of advice, is back 10, 20 years ago, we weren't even concerned with flooding. That has changed a lot across Ontario. We've seen more and more flooding that's been happening. So some of the riverside properties that are right on the lake, I would, before I invested any money, I would absolutely check with the local conservation authority to see if in fact it is at or near a floodplain. Because if this is a long-term investment, you don't want to be the guy buying a secondary suite and trying to build a basement apartment where there's a floodplain. First of all, they're going to shut you down. But even if you're just outside of the floodplain, it could change over time where you could be getting water in your place. And that's a huge concern that I wanted to share with you. So that would be the one caveat I would tell you to be careful about is flooding. Spending your money, keeping the water out of there is so vital. So,
always great advice.
Yeah, sorry, Xavi, I just want to throw that out.
No, that's perfect. Always great advice, especially here in Windsor. Michael, just before I let you go, if you want to put your contact information, I don't know if you want to share that in the chat room over there. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you, you know, shoot the shit, or maybe they're
sure. Let's see if I can do that
on the east side of Toronto area. Then you have somebody that you can grab some coffee with and pick his brain.
Coffee? Are you saying we can actually see people soon, or is that what you're telling me?
Hey, and listen, if you're ever down this way, I mean, I know you are. Then please feel free to give me a shout, and we can grab a glass of wine or a beer. Okay. All right, guys, and
absolutely, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. For everybody else on the show, join back next Tuesday, same time, same place. We have a couple of local realtors here to talk about the Windsor market. The following Tuesday, we're going to talk to the guys who created or who are in construction of the first ever tiny house here in Windsor. So that's going to be an awesome discussion. The third Tuesday of June, we have Luke Boyron. I can't say his name, but Luke is probably the biggest wholesaler, I think, in Ontario, right? So he's really, really active, and we want to talk about wholesaling and how maybe you want to get into that. So we got a lot of great experts coming in the next couple of weeks. Join up for that, sign up for the meetings, and we'll see you then. Until then, stay apart and stay safe.